What's happening, everybody? It's Sean with reactions to the classics, and today we got a reaction to Jimmy Buffett, his album Changes in Latitudes, Changes in Attitudes, brought to us by a friend, longtime supporter, and patron of the channel, Trucker Kev. Thank you, Trucker Kev. Appreciate you. Appreciate all the patrons who make this thing go. If you don't support us anyway, check out the Patreon link below. The Patreon link on the end screen. Just past 2,500 videos. We could never do that without the patrons. All right. The only Jimmy Buffett on the channel is a top 10 that we did, and I just looked it up 4 years ago, which really made me know Jimmy in a different way because I only knew one song, and that song happens to be on this album. But Kev gives a really good background of not only the album, but kind of Jimmy. So I won't have a lot of research on this part, but let's see Kev's thoughts. He said, let's take a look at a fantastic album that launched him from cult status to legendary icon with one famous song. Yes, this is the album that contains the famous Margaritaville, but there's a whole lot more. Pretty much coming out of the folk scene where he hung with John Prine, one of the greatest, and one of our Chicago legends, Steve Goodman. He made his way down towards back to Alabama in the early 1970s. He had what we like to call his Key West albums. There were 4 of them from 73 to 76. The first one was actually made in 1970, but didn't get any sort of acclaim until 73. They're called Living and Dying in Three-Quarter Time, A1A, a white sport coat, and a pink crustine. I always have a hard time saying that word. A creative take on a Marty Robbins legendary song, and Havana Daydreaming. This would be where with this 1977 album, he would basically leave Key West behind and become more Gulf and Western, is what they called his music, LOL. Basically being a take on country and Western. It would be again, though, also a lot of songs focusing not only away from Key West and Florida, but along the Gulf, and subsequent albums, of course, would come with Caribbean influences and a whole lot more. For those that don't know a lot about Jimmy, that's okay. He's written many, many successful books. Also, and everybody knows about his adventures. A lot of times, some songs are culminated from them through the years. He's a very worldwide traveled sailor. This is kind of his breakaway album that gained him notoriety and a whole group of fans, never realizing the number of fans that would flock to his shows every time he tours, just like the Grateful Dead. They had the Deadheads. Somebody said, you know what, Jimmy, your fans are like parrot heads, and that's what they finally become known as. And I will tell you an aside where I live here in northern Dallas. He used to come here every year. He hasn't come here for probably 5-6 years. But when he would come and Trey was still in high school, like Trey didn't go, but like all the high school kids would go. Like it really was an event. I'm like, they're all going to Jimmy Buffett, but they were. Now, one of the things that Jim has always appealed to many about is his double standards and his sense of humor. And a lot of the songs that he writes, you have to listen carefully because this is long before videos and social media. There are a lot of just basic fun stuff in his music. Songs like The Great Peanut Butter Conspiracy, Why Don't We Get Drunk, aka Full Stone Barroom Country, Why Don't We Get Drunk and Screw. You really have to look at the lyrics on a lot of stuff to see, and you just can't help but smile on how neatly crafted his stuff is. Many of the songs were written by Jimmy on this album, but he also has a couple of great covers too. Changes in Latitudes, the title track that begins the album, is just a fantastic classic cut. There's some softer, gentle ballads such as Lovely Cruise and The Shelter, and a few more. You have some hard-rocking kind of style songs such as Tampico, Trauma, and the album closer, Landfall. What really sets this album apart, too, are a great many covers. There's a fantastic Banana Republics written by the legendary Steve Goodman, who Kev mentioned earlier, and once again, like he did on the prior album, Havana Daydreaming. He went to songwriter Jesse Winchester and did a fantastic cover in 1970's Biloxi. What really makes this album and the following albums to me stand out is the awesome arrangement production from Mr. Mike Utley and the Coral Reefer Band. So I think I've said enough here. I'm not going to really go into dissecting each song, Kev says. Just hopefully you enjoy it. And for those that really like it, be sure to check out the following album too, 1978, since the next year's Son of a Sailor. It's just as good. They're kind of interchangeable to me. So a great breakdown from Kev there. I have very little, just a little info. 7 studio album, remains the best-selling album of his career, which you would expect. Went to 12 in the U.S., 2 on the country chart, and went platinum, and contains, of course, his biggest single, Margaritaville. It was very popular and critically well-received, and was a transitional album on several levels for Buffett, which Kev already covered. In a commercial sense, it ushered in Buffett's greatest period of chart and airplay popularity, changing him from an FM cult favorite and minor hitmaker to a top-drawing touring artist whose albums sold in the millions, receiving regular AM airplay at the time. Yes, if you're younger, you heard that right. Because when I was very young, you wanted your music on the AM radio. FM just existed as some little weird thing over here. And then it just shifted. I want to say early 80s. It just shifted and went the opposite direction. AM became much more talk radio and that sort of stuff. And FM became where you wanted to land. But if you've never been here before, the music will not be in the video, but it'll be at a Vimeo link below. So click on that and check it out. Well, let's jump into it. But the title track, that album opener, Changes in Latitudes, Changes in Attitudes, was written solely by Jimmy. Single went to 37 on the Hot 100, 24 on the country charts, 34 in Canada. Begins with an instrumental introduction, which initially resembles the chorus of Yellowbird, which is originally a 19th century Haitian song, which gained popularity in the U.S. through a Hawaiian-flavored instrumental by the Arthur Wyman Group in 1961, and then it evolves into a distinctive chorus of the song itself. The phrase, "and son of a bitches," was edited out of the single version of the song, replaced by "some bruises, some stitches." It's one of Buffett's most popular songs with fans, and it's part of the Big Eight that has played at almost all of his concerts. All right, I'm going to have the lyrics up as always. Thanks again, Kev. The arrangement, a lot of Margaritaville type arrangement. That might be what we get on this whole album, obviously with the style, but really, really good song, really good writing. I'm not going to read it all to you, but I mean, he's basically just saying, you know, you reflect on what you had, but if you dwell on it too long, you're not going to see what's in front of you, basically, and the things you have to do. And I mean, he talks about he didn't ponder the question too long. And then the pre-chorus before the last chorus, how like, oh, yesterdays are over my shoulders, so I can't look back for too long. There's just too much to see waiting in front of me. And I know that I just can't go wrong. And then that chorus with these changes in latitudes, changes in attitudes, nothing remains quite the same. With all my running and all my cunning, if I couldn't laugh, I would just go insane. And he replaces that with different things throughout the chorus. But really well done song, really well arranged, and yeah, well written. Next up, we have Wonder Why We Ever Go Home, written by Jimmy. The original version of this appeared on the Rancho Deluxe soundtrack under the title Wonder Why You Ever Go Home. Wonder why we ever go home. It's talking about kind of getting older and your dreams kind of, I don't want to say shattering, but not being fulfilled, and everything's just kind of the same. And the years grow shorter, not longer. That's totally true as I get older, I think. A lot going on here, even though, you know, it starts out with a nice acoustic. Then we get a nice solo in here of an electric. You got the harmonica, but then you get some backing in here, and it turns from kind of just this slow churning ballad to almost a little country in there. And it kind of goes back to the ballad. It's a really well done song. Next up, we have Banana Republics, that one written by Goodman, Rothermel, and Berg. Banana Republics. Not talking about the clothing store, boys and girls. I'm not going to get into the definition of really what a Banana Republic is. Most of the time, I'm talking about a country in Central America. You have been in the past, or some other countries now that kind of fit that definition. But basically, he's writing the story of the expats, like the expatriates. The Americans going there, some of them are running ganges, some are escaping relationships, and some of them are escaping the IRS, right? So they go there and they're just hanging out, but the people there don't trust them and they don't trust the people. So they just go down there and try to work their game down at the bars and stuff, give them something to dance to, but then they figure out they're going to have the same problems. Those problems followed them. So a really well done song, right? A really mature song that really unfolds kind of a bigger message, right? You can't run from your problems. So well done. Tampico or Tampico Trauma is up next, written by Jimmy. Tampico Trauma, a different arrangement than any of these other songs, right? We had a lot of variety so far on these first four songs, and I read it's basically, I guess it's a northern area of Mexico, correct me if I'm wrong, but he goes there and he says he's never going to leave because the women are pretty and he's in there partying, but he gets a little out of control. The cops are his friends, so, you know, they kind of look the other way. I'm sure he pays them off. And he gets a little out of control, and they tell him, you know, you're going to need to leave. We better never see you again, and we're not going to pretend. So a good song. Jimmy got himself in trouble. Next up, we have Lovely Cruise, written by Jonathan Bayham. All right, Lovely Cruise. A fine song. I mean, it's more country-based, really. It's fine. He's telling the story, pretty clever story. He's out on the cruise with the girl, right? He's telling, it's been so great, and we enjoy it, but it's about to come to an end. So let's enjoy our cruise, but the harbor lights are coming, so all we're going to have is our memories of this. Let her know, let's not take this too serious, right? We're just kind of chilling out here. Let's enjoy it for what it is. So kind of a clever way to put that to song. Well, here we go. It's the song that basically everyone knows, right? Margaritaville, written by Jimmy. I got quite a bit of research on this just because, you know, it's a transcendent song. It was written about a drink Jimmy discovered at Lung's Cocina del Sur restaurant in Austin, Texas, and the first huge surge of tourists who descended on Key West, Florida around that time. He wrote most of the song one night at a friend's house in Austin, and it finished while spending time in Key West. Went to 8 on the Hot 100 in the U.S., 1 on the Easy Listening chart, 13 on the country chart, 4 in Canada, and I mentioned it earlier, it remains his highest charting solo single. It was inducted into the 2016 Grammy Hall of Fame for its cultural and historic significance. In 2023, so just this year when I'm filming it, it was selected for preservation in the United States National Recording Registry by the Library of Congress, which is really it is a huge honor. He revealed during the recording of an episode of CMT's Crossroads with Zach Brown Band that Margaritaville was actually supposed to be recorded. I didn't find somewhere else, but he said it, by Elvis Presley. But Elvis died the same year the song was released. He declined the offer before the song could be recorded. As Jimmy's signature song, it has been used in a number of commercial ventures and product licensing tie-ins, including, these are all the things, Radio Margaritaville, radio station that broadcasts on the internet, and Sirius XM Radio. Tales from Margaritaville, a collection of short stories by Jimmy. Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville, a casual dining restaurant chain where it's kind of in several different places. I've actually eaten in one way back in the day, probably 23 years ago at Universal Studios in Orlando. A margarita mix and tons of other alcohol projects. A frozen concoction maker. Chips and salsa, chicken wings, frozen seaweed, key lime pie filling. Margaritaville Souls of the Tropics footwear, men's and women's apparel, outdoor and beach furniture, Margaritaville beach cruiser bicycles. So I just said it because this, I don't know how much wealth, I couldn't find anywhere. And I mean, you're not going to disclose these things as the artist, how much wealth this song has brought Jimmy. The producer, Robert Putnam, told Sound on Sound, he said, one day in the studio, Jimmy comes in and starts telling me about a day he had in Key West. He was coming home from a bar and he lost one of his flip-flops and he stepped on a beer can top and he couldn't find the salt for his margarita. He said he's writing lyrics to it. And I say, that's a terrible idea for a song. You can see where Robert was coming from there. He comes back in a few days later with Wasted to Get Way Again in Margaritaville and plays it. And right then, everyone knows it's a hit song. Now, look, I was alive, but I was sick, so I don't remember when the song was huge. And it wasn't as huge. It went to number 8, but it wasn't this huge, iconic thing that it is now. I'm sure many of you who listen to FM and classic radio are sick of this song. Here's the thing. I think this is one of the greatest songs ever. Not for the songwriter, it just has that happy feeling, right? You hear the beginning of this song, the first 10 seconds of it, and you just got to smile, man. It's just greatness. I mean, it's just as catchy as it gets, but it is a really well-written song. He's basically in this beach community, and that's just living there, and things aren't really going his way, right? He spends his time, in the first verse, playing the guitar, smelling the shrimp and everything, but the gold in this is the choruses, right? Because in chorus 1, obviously, it's the whole thing we know, Wasting Away, again in Margaritaville, searching for my lost shaker of salt. Some people claim there's a woman to blame. So he's down, right? He's feeling down, and his friends are telling him it's the woman's fault. But in verse 1, he says, but I know it's nobody's fault. In verse 2, he discovers a tattoo of a girl that is a cutie, but he doesn't even know how he got it. So then we get the same chorus with the last line. So he went from, I know it's nobody's fault, to now I think, hell, it could be my fault. And then he steps on he blew out his flip-flop, stepped on a pop top, went back and got himself some margaritas to ease his pain, right? But the last chorus ends with, but I know it's my own damn fault. So just a great song, man. I'm telling you, everything about it. So I got 4 songs left. We got In the Shelter, written by Jimmy. A different version of this was originally released in 1971 on High Cumberland Jubilee. All right, In the Shelter, an intense song, right? If you're listening to the lyrics or reading the lyrics, a very intense song. It's about this girl who things didn't go well, right? She's in the shelter, and as it unfolds, she tries to share with her dad what she's going through, and he really doesn't want to hear any of it. So as it goes towards the end, like she's sitting on this dock knowing what she's going to do next. So you get the idea she's going to jump in and kill herself, man. And somebody's watching it from afar. But a heavy song, man. A really good, I think, way of sequencing, right? Because Margaritaville is such a fun song and so good. If you follow that up with kind of another, quote, fun song, that song would pale in comparison, even if it was really good. So following up with something totally different, an intense song like this, is really well done. Next up, we have Miss You Badly, written by Jimmy and Greg Fingers Taylor. Miss You So Badly, more of a country arrangement. Really well done. He's just telling this girl, his woman, how he misses her so badly because he's out. We're going to assume to her, and we're going to assume this is somewhat autobiographical, but an example of his lyricism, verse 3, I got a head full of feeling higher and an ear full of Patsy Cline. There's just no one who can touch her. Hell, I'll hang on every line. Oh, crazy how things happen. And so her biggest song obviously was Crazy, and he gets that in. I don't think that's an accident, just intuitive songwriting there. It's incredible but true. The longer I'm gone, the closer I feel to you, and I miss you badly, girl. I love you madly. I'm feeling so glad just to be heading home. So Another well-done song. Next up, Biloxi or Biloxi, whichever you prefer. It's said both ways, written by Jesse Winchester. All right, he's basically just sharing, he's painting a picture, right, of the beach and everything that's going on there with the girls and the boy digging with the pail, and then their kind of relationship with this woman. There's kind of a melancholy tone to it. So it was fine. And now we're going to finish it off with a Jimmy written tune. We got Landfall. All right, Landfall, ending this off on a upbeat song where, I mean, Jimmy's just really saying he's had enough of life, so he's going back into his boat, right? And just sailing around, and what would they do if I didn't make landfall? And just kind of his adventures that he goes in and how he kind of gets tired of people, so he needs that reset. So sets the tone for the tone he was trying to set, I think, on this album that he gets into more in later albums, it sounds like. But I mean, this album has a lot of more serious stuff in it as well. Before I get to my favorite tracks, Trucker Kev says his honorable mentions on this one are Landfall and Miss You Badly. His favorites are Everything Else, LOL. I don't have quite that many, but I have a few. Honorable mentions, Wonder Why We Ever Go Home and Banana Republics. Faves are going to be Changes in Latitudes, Changes in Attitudes, Margaritaville, and the very powerful In the Shelter. Before we go to my overall grade, let's see what Kev gives. He says, I do listen to this album very often. Still, in fact, I truck to many of his albums still because I just enjoy them. So the final rating on this one is up there. I hold it still at an 8.75. I always say this with the patrons. They know these albums inside and out. This is my first time hearing this album. I knew Margaritaville. I didn't know any of these other songs. One of them or two of them or more of them might have appeared on the Buffett top 10 that we did 4 years ago for Josh, but I heard that once. I don't remember. But for me, I'm going to be at a very, very strong 8.0. Jimmy is a very good songwriter, right? And understands how to arrange things. And the diversity on this album is very impressive, but quite the writer. So let me know what you think of this one down below. What are your favorite tracks? What else should I check out from Jimmy? And until next time, guys, I will see you.